So today, as we continue the conversation, Debbie Smith is going to be leading us. And Debbie is our Community Relations Director. She came to us last spring to the MCIE after retiring from a successful career at Chaffey College. And so go ahead, take it away, Debbie.
Sure. Okay. Thank you for that. We've got a couple of things to do. One, we want to hear from industry that was at the educator event, but for those who weren't there or may not be clear on what the purpose was for the educator event, I want to show you a couple of slides and I'll have you pull those up. We did a mystery of manufacturing for our educators because healthcare is not a mystery, construction's not a mystery, IT often is not a mystery. They know, students know what these industries are, what they do to some degree, because they can visually drive past and say, oh, that's a construction site, I'm going to the doctor, so on and so forth. But manufacturing continues to be a mystery. And we thought there has been such strong demand for technicians at all, whether it's a machinist, a welder, mechanic, operator, machine operator, whatever it might be. We have a lot of job openings, and we're actually, MCIE is in the exploratory phase right now to find out from manufacturers, are we still in that position where technicians are hard to find? By a show of hands, just from industry, are technicians hard to find? So Steve's hand is up. Both of Rick's hands are up. Stacy's not on the call. She was going to be on this call, and I was going to ask her. Cinnamon, did I see yours go up, or yours is different? Yeah, different.
I think Stacy is on the call. At least I see her name.
There she is. I'm sorry. So let's go to the next slide. We held the Mysteries of Manufacturing. It was held at the DoubleTree. We had several sponsors. We literally rolled out, you can go to the next picture. We literally rolled out the red carpet for educators, offered them appetizers, beer and wine, and sat in a room to discuss what are their needs so that manufacturers could hear, you know, how can they incorporate manufacturing into their lesson plans if they don't have them, or if they do have it, how can we scale those great opportunities? It was opened up to about 130 people. The day of, we had 127 people registered. Because it's a free event, we feel like we had closer to 90, 95 people in the room. And at each table, we had a manufacturer that sat with those educators because we were going to do activities throughout the event. We can go to the next slide. And the next one. So pretty full room, and we started with some just information. Did you know that all of these things are made in the Inland Empire? One of only 2 firefighting helmet companies in the US. One of them's right here in the Inland Empire, Phoenix Helmets. Artisan Lighting. So we have from the very boutique type of manufacturing to the brand, you know, making Disney characters and Karma cars. Fender Guitars, Soup in a Cup through Nong Shim, Ventura Foods, and so on. You can go to the next slide. We showed them all of some may be easily recognizable, and some of them they may be unfamiliar with. Maybe they don't realize their flashlight is a mag light, but again, made right here in the Inland Empire. Next slide. And before we held the event, we did a lot of research. And one of the things that we did is we looked at, and predominantly, this is through the Mountain Desert Career Pathways group. Matt Wells couldn't join us today. He had planned on it. Something came up last minute, but we thank him because his team, a gal named Andrea from High Desert, she puts together all this wonderful data. But we question data, whether it's hers or Lower Desert or anywhere in the county, because as you will see, mechanical engineering technologists, line 10, and technicians, the 1-year forecast is we need 17 of those people with 3,700 manufacturers in the 2-county region. I find that number shockingly low. I don't know if our manufacturers would say, no, that looks right. Engineering technologists and technicians, I don't know if they're including industrial technicians, nor do I see them on here listed separately. So the electrical mechanical technicians. So I don't know where they line up. You can go to the next slide. This was San Bernardino County, and then here we are in Riverside County, same thing, about 14 people. Welders, you know, there's quite a bit more demand. I want to go to the next slide because where we land is, if you look at what the data that they've gathered through the educational system, Matt said that they have 9 districts, 16 high schools, plus an additional 10 alternative schools and adult ed. So 26 schools out of all of that, they have an enrollment for the 2021-2022 school year of 234 people amongst those 26 school sites, which is about 9 students per school site if every single school has a program, which they do not. So you take these 234 students in some form of a manufacturing and product development course, and we are behind arts and media, building trades, child development, agriculture, and public services in terms of enrollment. You can see they're in the thousands. We're down here at 234 people have enrolled in manufacturing. We're often not on the radar at all. And if we are, again, it's because somebody knows somebody in manufacturing, or they, you know, somehow they know about the industry. Otherwise, it's very hard for them to connect to manufacturing without having educators who have an awareness of the industry. What does it offer to their students? Is it something they would include? They'd include curriculum for manufacturing for their students, or it's of little to no interest because they know nothing about it. So how can you present on something you're unfamiliar with? You can go to the next slide.
Debbie, slow
Yes,
down,
yes.
slow down, slow down.
Who is this?
Steve,
Okay, yes.
I keep raising my hand, but you ignore me.
I'm sorry, I didn't see it.
All right, so,
Go for it.
you know, I have 6 openings for a mechanic right now. I have 2 openings for an electrician. So 17, I can meet half of that all just by myself. And I'm sure I'm not alone with that. So I don't know where this information comes from. And yeah, there needs to be feedback, because I think they just lump everything in with the CNET codes or ONET codes.
Yes.
And that's where we get into the challenges, because, you know, my specialties are definitely different than Cinnamon's or somebody else's, Tony's. But, you know, we can align with training to meet the needs of the majority of that and then go forward, which is what we've done with the Intech Center, with the High Desert Training Center, and with other programs launch. So it's important to note also that this graph that you have up right now, if you remember back to when you were in high school, what you signed up for was typically what your friends were signed up for. And it had very little to do with beyond high school. It had more to do with, where am I going to be able to socialize with my buddies while I'm in school, and yeah, get credit so I can get out of this high school, and then I'll figure out what I want to do. So that's where we need to reach out to the counselors and the parents to allow them an opportunity for not just college, but career readiness, because not everybody is going to go to college out of high school.
Exactly.
So I think that's where that focus needs to shift. Is, yeah, these graphs show one thing, but even if you talk to some of the higher ups within the K through 12 education field, they know that the CTE programs are geared towards what my buddy's doing, not what I need to know for getting out of high school. So
these slides were intended. Thank you for that. Go ahead, Rick. I think, were you talking to us? No. Okay.
I have a candidate here for electrician position. I'm just finished his test and I was grading it and letting him know how he did.
Oh, okay. No worries. So you're exactly right, Steve. We had this research behind us saying this can't be accurate, and these numbers are extremely low for manufacturing. We agree with you on all points. And it's very troubling and problematic then, because it says to us that hospitality and tourism, which pays, I was in hospitality and tourism for 17 years, so I know that industry quite well, pays very low. And we've got manufacturing here way down at the, middle of the scale at best, because people are unfamiliar with it, parents, youth. And what's happening is, what prompted, another piece that prompted this is, at our school site, when I was there, recruiters were coming into the classroom from the big box logistics companies, and even construction is courting high school students. They're building buildings on the high school campus so that students can walk by and go, oh man, that's cool. I want to do that. I want to go build a building because it's tangible. They can see, they're working with their hands. They're measuring and cutting and building and hanging drywall and the whole 9 yards. It's exciting. So we wanted our manufacturers to understand that we need to start courting educators, and whatever that looks like. In this case, we wanted to roll out the red carpet and say, are you aware of this industry, the wages that you can receive, the opportunities that exist in all levels of occupations across the board? So many that there's too many to list, and they're certainly not all listed here. So it got a little troubling for us, because we thought, where's the next generation going to come from if the educators are unaware, the parents aren't promoting it, and youth know little to nothing about it? It's not an industry that kids are going to select just randomly and say, I want to go do that. So they need to see welders welding, builders building, and makers making. And so we've got to get in the game. We've got to be a little bit more aggressive in our approach to educators. So we did just this first foundational meeting to lay the groundwork and say, let's start the dialogue and start sharing all the good practices, the things that are going well, like the High Desert Training Center that's responding directly to industry demand and needs, and creating curriculum around their structure and what they say they need. So this was our starting point. And we used to always, when we held our summits in the past, for those of you that attended, they were directed at manufacturers, and there were a lot of educators sprinkled in. This was a dedicated event inviting all educators with one manufacturer per table. So we needed 12, 15 manufacturers or so. We had about 17 individuals there from that represented manufacturing, and they were able to sit in and listen to what are the educators saying they need in order to promote manufacturing as a viable occupation. And so let me go to the next slide. I don't think I need the next, those are some responses, but go to the last one. We can just leave that up a minute. We asked at that event, that spreadsheet, which is a little harder to read, so I'm going to kind of explain. We asked, what do they need? As a survey question at the table. They did it as an activity with their manufacturer sitting there. What are the challenges, including manufacturing curriculum into the classroom? What all types of things. What is needed in order to promote manufacturing, essentially? And so they said, we need internships. They were more interested in additional information on apprenticeship, which is great news, because we want to promote and scale that work that's being done and that's been so successful. They wanted the industry tours and guest presenters and so on and so forth. So that initiated, now here's the next phase. I'd like our manufacturers to speak to what they noticed and what they heard at the event, instead of me doing that talking. And so I don't know if Cinnamon or Wally or Stacy, go ahead. Cinnamon says, pick me. So go ahead. And she was one of the presenters at the event, as was Stacy Duvall, who has joined us. Thank you, Stacy, for being here. And just share what your thoughts are. And you can actually get rid of the PowerPoint. Thank you so much, Vincent.
Yeah, I just want to say again, I've said it a few times, but kudos to the planning of it. I've gotten credit, but all I did is show up. It was an amazing event, enough to be like people want to replicate it. Yeah, it was super fun. all of the educators that were there were participating on the edge of the seat. The big takeaways that had a lasting impression for me, especially coming right outside of State of the County. So I went to State of the County and then I went to our event within, I don't know, was it a week or two apart? The takeaway for me is that manufacturing is not showing up on those first charts that you're showing us, Debbie, because it's not something that's even on the mind of educators, students, parents. Like at State of the County, they showed all the companies they bragged about what was happening in our region. We're manufacturers. We're doing the biggest, best things, but they're not using the word manufacturing at all. And the teachers haven't been thinking about manufacturing at all. So one of the things that was great, I think, for manufacturers too, when we're putting our job listings, is to use different words. So for example, are we calling ourselves makers, the industry of industrial arts? Those were some of the takeaways as far as a manufacturer of thinking about, like, how can I reposition, you know, the need that I have so that it's attractive to the people who are seeking jobs. The other takeaways were that the educators were really hungry for our involvement. And they were not saying, you know, sometimes it's difficult to say, well, we can't get a busload and come to you. I felt like the doors were open, like, come to us, come to all of our CTE planning sessions. Like, there's just a disconnect. It's not that educators don't want to direct students into the correct industries where there's a needs. It's just they don't know, and we're the ones to really step up and help them do it. So that was my takeaway. It was amazing. It was done so well. I think we should be replicating it.
That's
over and
great.
over again.
Thank you. Yeah. One of the big box companies, distribution centers, came and said, hey, can the whole class come on a tour of our facility? And we'll feed them lunch. And then they got them to sign up on the dotted line. I mean, they need technicians. You know, where manufacturing is battling for some of the same personnel in some cases for the production equipment, the conveyor systems and all that to keep it operational. Also, the robotics and automation is a sexier form of manufacturing. Kids can relate to what we call ARM, automation, robotics, and mechatronics. So we've renamed that intentionally, using the robotic arm as kind of the logo to say, you know, this is part of manufacturing, and trying to make it more attractive to youth. You're exactly right, Cinnamon, in everything that you said. So if we're not on their radar, they can't promote it. Yeah. So how do you as manufacturers get on their radar? Some of you are the ones who repeatedly respond and are committees for the community colleges and at the advisories and part of boards and so on and so forth. But we've got 3,700 manufacturers in our region. How do we stir up the fire for the rest of them? They're all, you know, we're still at that poaching stage. I don't have who I need.
A lot of it, sorry to interrupt you, Debbie, but we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Like, some of it, I think we can ride on the coattails. The schools some schools have like construction trades where they're actually building things. Absolutely. Already in the career pathways. I think that we could ride those same coattails as makers and builders. Those are the same students we're competing for. It's not like we need to develop our own program. That person can either want to build a house or make a car or a light fixture, any of those things. So it's just, I think it's just making the connect. One of the other things outside of the Manufacturers Council, but we also did a pilot that didn't do so well through workforce development, is we did like these assessments of students. And what we saw were there was a disconnect between aptitude and interest. And what it is that there's no association of what manufacturing is for a student to even know they have the interest. But what we're seeing is really high aptitudes and interests in things like the arts. So that's where I think our job is to really say, no, all of these different careers and things that we have within manufacturing fit where there's already an aptitude, and just help the educators and parents and students make that connection so they understand that this is a fit.
One tactic that Mary Ann Johnson, those of you that know her with County Workforce Development, said this exact same thing. So students take an aptitude test, they don't know anything about manufacturing, so it doesn't rank high on the list of interest areas, but they're skilled at using their hands, working with their hands, hand tools, power tools, all of that. They like that idea. So now we're asking, well, maybe we can intercept, even if they said they're not interested, can we go back and share with them, explain to them, and have them as a captive audience and say, hey, this is manufacturing, in case you're not aware, everything
And
from
if you
these.
do it in a way that says to the student, I mean, imagine being the student, you just do this aptitude test and you're like, oh, all my aptitudes don't align with my interests. But you go to the student, you say, wow, you're amazing. You really have an aptitude for this. Did you know that you could work in this industry and make things with this aptitude?
Exactly.
Instant interest. As soon
Yes.
as you recognize the strength of the student, and then you can help make that connection, like, wow, you really have an aptitude for this.
Yes. Well, I'll open the floor to Stacy or Rick. I don't know if you have any feedback, what you notice, witness, or think about, where do we go from here?
Well, I really enjoyed the event. I thought it was really well planned out and interesting. The only critique I would give is that I would have liked a little more time to speak with the educators at my table. Really didn't get much of a chance to do that, other than to concentrate on the activities.
Mhm. Okay.
So, and just to kind of follow along with Steve, I've got 7 openings for electricians right now and 6 openings for mechanics. I just didn't interview, but tested a gentleman who came in to apply for electrician position. He's got 20+ years as a maintenance electrician, and he scored a 67 out of 123 on our craft test. So it kind of tells you that it's very difficult to find people that are at the level that we need for our facility here. So whether we'll interview them or not, I'm not sure. I'm going to put that up to the committee, but yeah. So we rely heavily on training our own craftspeople.
Yes.
I've got 4 interns, went through the summer internship. They just finished up the classes at Intech. And I just gave them the exact same test that this guy just took. One scored a 72, one scored a 75, another one scored a 77, and the last one scored a 95 out of 123 questions. So, these guys are at a higher level. These people we've trained are at a higher knowledge level than the guys I'm getting off the street.
Yeah, with lots of experience too.
With lots of
sounded like.
experience, yeah.
Wow. Okay, so Stacy, I'll leave it open for you as well if you want to share any insights or.
Only a couple things. I thought that the event was a great event, and I thought that the educators had some good feedback for us, encouraging us to open our doors and give more tours to help generate interest from the students. Sometimes, it's hard to spark that imagination without actually seeing something in progress. So that, I think that motivated me a little bit more to help open our doors and actually get out and start talking to students. In fact, just last month, I went to a 4th grade class, and I thought that was going to be the hardest presentation I've ever done, to tell these 4th graders about our rubber washers. But it was the most fun I've ever had. And you know what? Cinnamon said it earlier. I came in and I spoke to those kids and I told them my first sentence was, I'm a maker. I make things. And the reaction from them was, one of excitement. And so it's just about getting out in front of the students and opening our doors and making sure that we're available to help keep that imagination and spark that imagination in some of these kids that don't have the opportunities that some of us had. I mean, I grew up here, so I got to do all kinds of weird stuff when I was in 4th grade. So I think that helping to give tours and make sure that we're going out to these different events to promote not just our business, but all the opportunity that manufacturing has is a good thing. So
That's great. We, I don't want to, it's not his exact words, but Matt Wells, I said, what did you think of the event? I see your hand now, Alan. And he said, I talked to our educators and they said it was something that they would drive down the hill again to attend, that they felt it was worth their time because they took that extra hour to come down. That was pretty telling for us, that educators are hungry for the message. I do think, Stacy, the way that you crafted it to say I'm a maker is especially appealing to youth, because that's the language they're hearing in the schools is, movers and makers and so on. So movers, the transportation end of the product. So I want to go to Alan and then circle back to kind of next steps and where we stand. But go ahead, Alan.
I just wanted to jump on Stacy's comment there about the tours. If you aren't able to give an actual factory tour to our students, both the San Bernardino County schools and Riverside County schools have video services that they'll come in and do a tour that you can allow, behind closed doors. They'll take a complete video thing and they can do a live conversation with you with the classrooms at the same time. It was the NEPRIS model, but now San Bernardino County Schools has built their own, and Riverside's actually using the NEPRIS program right now. It's a really good system to get students interested. And I just heard the other day, the only other comment I want to raise, I heard the other day from a junior high class, middle school class, that, oh, you guys do Optimus Prime. I went, oh, crud, I hadn't heard about that in, 20 years till when my kids were young. And sure enough, it's still out there. It's still a popular thing. And it's all about robotics, right? It's transforming things into other things. And that's what we do. So I just want to make that comment. But Stacy, you were great, by the way. Both my educators at the table asked me about you afterwards.
So we heard a lot about NEPRIS and also the video conferencing where you can stay at your shop and conference into a classroom, which is a great way of saving that commute time, but actually getting out to the public and speaking to students. And I did do a bit of a follow-up debrief with the county, and Cinnamon and I got to talk. And one of the things that we said is less effective, those of you that have attended job fairs in the past, you get the students that walk around all dressed up with their resume and they check off that they spoke to an employer and move along to the next booth with little to no interest really in your company or what you do. They're just there to fulfill their class assignment. And we thought, why don't we do a road show? But again, this is, what does industry want to do? How committed are they and how committed can they be? So we had both educators and industry. We didn't direct it towards industry, or we maybe could have had more of those champion cards filled out. But with the 90 or so people that were in the room, we got 43 champion cards filled out. The bulk of those were from educators saying, I will carry the manufacturing messaging into the classroom. And I'm willing to continue this dialogue with manufacturers and through either advisories or whatever other means. So we now have a list of regional educators who are interested in, manufacturing as a pathway. Also not necessarily new to MCIE, because we've had GAF and somebody who's returning to the MCIE, Vista Metals, and a couple of others, James Hardy Building Products and Prestige Mold, some newer names, and they all signed up. Exquadrum said, you know, yes, I want to be a champion for the industry. So we don't want to just walk away from the event and say, okay, well, we MCIE, you know, did their part and great. Everybody wants to move on this topic, but we need, you know, kind of an advisory group going forward. We figure they'll meet 4 times a year. We can talk more about that in just a minute. But bottom line is, a couple of things. People keep mentioning the data. The data for years, again, I was at Chaffey College 22 years and I never saw data that I would argue the point with many people and say, you have 11 jobs listed that are available. And I know one company right now seeking 10. These are not accurate numbers. And here's one of the things that we think is happening with the industrial electrical mechanical technicians is they're called maintenance technicians here, they're called industrial technicians here, they're called electricians here, they're called mechanics here, and mechanics can get blurred in automotive, aeronautics, you know, a number of other areas. So are we pulling really true data for the manufacturing industry? And what happens then is educators say, well, I'm not going to invest and set up a whole classroom with $500,000 worth of equipment and there's 4 jobs available. You know, that's ridiculous. So they look at labor stats that don't reflect what industry is saying or has said for years. Same with, I saw that message, Cinnamon. I don't see it reflected there unless you could go line by line and pull out what you think aligns with the manufacturing industry. So it's a real struggle to get accurate data because, again, educators are really going to do, it's just like any company. I'm not going to go open a sandwich shop down the road next to Jersey Mike's, Subway, and Mountain Mike's, or whatever it's called. You know, I'm just not going to do that because there's too much competition and there's no need. There's not enough demand. So same with educators. They look at their budgets and they say, well, I don't need to develop a manufacturing pathway. That's problematic for manufacturers unless there really isn't that big of demand. And I'm hearing, at least from a couple of you, that the demand still exists. So Judy, I'm not sure you got to weigh in. Stacy, do you hire industrial technicians at your location? I'm machinists, welders, that technical trades, if you will, tradespeople.
We do.
And
Same here.
and do you both have openings?
Yes.
We don't. We're full up right now.
Okay. Some of you that have openings, these are ongoing openings. They've been either open
Yeah.
for a long period of time or they just stay open always because you never quite fill that. Our stats showed that of the 93,000 people working, 93 or 97, that there are 30,000 job openings in manufacturing through Burning Glass. Those were the numbers. So my question to LA EDC that gave us the data, does that mean that we have 90,000 people working and we need an additional 30,000? Or is that, you know, these 30,000, they've been open for a great period of time and they're left unfilled? Plus, you know, some people just leave job openings open because there's always, there's never not been a demand for an assembler, a production worker, a CNC operator, a lathe operator, or whatever. They just leave some of those job openings there. The point is, where do we go from here to let educators know that we're on board and that we want to, what would you call it? Engage ourselves in the classroom or on site in a more productive way through these different means, whether it's Nepris or SB Connect, because they're using different systems to get into the classroom. And tours, oftentimes tours are not possible. So what are the thoughts of our manufacturers? Is this a worthy investment of the MCIE time going forward? And if so, what does this look like in your minds? Or do you need some time to churn to process where we stand?
Yeah, I'd love to see more educators be involved with manufacturers and vice versa, because, you know, I think there's a lot of assumptions for not only kids, but parents of kids that, you know, they're going to get this dream job, and instead of turning handles or making things, like to me, to hear somebody say, hey, we make things, that'd be just as exciting. But to build that excitement, to build it in, when people can do stuff and make stuff, it's so much more empowering sometimes. I mean, even if it's not your job, it's fun to do. So, you know, bringing those educators to the manufacturers, or the manufacturers going to the schools, or whatever it is, I think is a great thing to do. And I would love to participate in that.
You know, Judy, you did mention, and Christina's on the line from the K-12 Strong Workforce Group. Thank you for being here. So here's our question to educators, because I had a few people, including when Cinnamon and I spoke, and others, we got a request to, you know, educators want manufacturers in the classroom to present, or some sort of a roadshow. Going to them is helpful sometimes. And it's not like now I don't have to get a bus and get a whole class
Right.
together and get all the permission slips signed and so on and so forth. If I can just have you come here and
Yeah.
show me a video of your plant and tell me all about it, and maybe bring me an artist in light, and bring me the widgets and the
Yeah.
gaskets and the
That's
so
what
on
I
and so
used to
forth.
do with my son.
Really
In his third and fourth grade class, I'd bring a little 3-shank tool that I could carry, because a lot of these are metal. There, you know, if it was, they were small enough to carry, and then to show what actually pops out of these things, it's kind of, you know, to me, a picture's worth 1,000 words.
Agreed.
So I'm a visual type person, and that's where it's exciting to kind of see. They don't know where all these pieces of stuff and things that, you know, you see every day, you don't know where they come from or how they're made. I love how it's made, that
show.
program. Yeah. So anyway.
Well, one of the things then, Judy, Christina, I did reach out to Stephanie Murillo, and we said, okay, that evening we talked about how do we go to a CTE advisory meeting? And I asked, are they done live or is via Zoom? And they said there's a mix, it depends, and that there's a regional calendar and so on and so forth. But how do we better connect those members of MCIE that are interested in going to an advisory?
Mhm.
What do you recommend, or do you have a recommendation on how do we make these, how do we move to the next step of connecting?
Thank you, Debbie. Hi, everyone. My name is Christina, and I'm a pathway coordinator with the K-12 Strong Workforce Program. And like Stephanie mentioned, it's a range, and I think it has to do with capacity. At the more micro level, each school district is required to participate in a CT advisory and to some capacity. They might host themselves. Riverside USD hosts their own, Hrupa hosts their own. Some school districts choose to participate in a county CTE advisory offering. For example, Moreno Valley participates in RCOE's advisory. And so if you participate in those, you might get, you might get multiple districts attending those.
And for multiple pathways. So they might
Multiple
not,
pathways.
they won't be manufacturing specific. Gotcha. Yes.
Sometimes RCOE divided them, clustered them in certain pathways, like health was by themselves, because I think they had a lot of people, but some of them might be in the same. So what we really see is that it depends on like what your capacity as an agency is and your members, and then how you can spread out and what do you think would have the greater impact. There's 3 populations that industry could reach out to. The first one is the students, right? And there's a continuum of what your exposure with them could look like. There's the softest touch, which is like a Zoom presentation, to some of the more intense experiences that you visiting a classroom, students coming to you, offering a summer shadowing experience, developing mentoring groups with the students. So there's a wide range. It's not only one option, or or having a summer internship. There's such a range of what you can do with students, and everything matters. Even the smallest, like pre-recorded Zoom message, even that can create an impact on students. The second target group is teachers. Teachers are mandated by the state to have some exposure to industry. So again, there's a range of what you can do with that. You can meet with them. You can, hold just a teacher group advisory with them. You can offer them an opportunity to come do an externship at your site. Again, just having them being exposed to what you are doing, and then what is currently available. The data piece, like you're saying, that the data that we're getting from the labor market information isn't matching what your reality, what you're seeing, right? So the teachers can see that. And then the third target is the counselors and the CT leadership at each school district. Counselors, in one way or another, they could be gatekeepers, right? And so we want to make sure that as much as students want to be with their best friend at that other class, that they're making the best informed decision that they can at their early stage, a young age. And so participating in the CT advisories, counselor PDs, anytime there's a counselor PD, either offered.
What is that? What's a
A
counselor?
counselor professional development.
Okay.
And then here with the regional consortium, we also have a counselor annual meeting. And so maybe even doing a presentation for that kind of maybe larger scope. So it really depends on the capacity. If we want to do something smaller scale, build certain relationships. There's some school districts that are thriving, right? And Alan knows this because he's worked with them, that are just doing great. They have all types of industry connections and have shadowing days for students. And there's some school districts that have very limited offerings for their students. So maybe we can do that kind of approach, looking at school districts maybe are starting their programs that don't have those relationships yet, teachers that are really eager to build those relationships. And then you could do maybe even large scale event, like your wonderful event you had, previously. So I hope that gives you a range. CTE, career education at the K-12 level, is right now being injected with, it's being revitalized, right? Whereas 20 years, it was college or dust. Now it's post-secondary training, and that could be community college career education program or anything else beyond that.
Training.
It's being, there's a lot of funding coming to CT career education. And so I think it's a really special time right now to be able to build that, connect industry back to K-16 and be informed, so students have actual successful options, right? Opportunities
Right.
once they leave the K-12 institutions.
Yeah, so we think that advisories might be a good gathering place, especially those that are specific to manufacturing, or if manufacturing hosts one specific to
Yes.
manufacturing, to hit the broadest number. What we found, even in our event, we heard that a lot of people in the room already had some sort of a program going on. And how do we attract additional school sites? Because sometimes they'll have a high school program, but no college program to go into, and vice versa. I don't know if it was you, Alan, saying this, or there's a reverse, there's a college, but no high school, or high school, but no college. And so they're just, they may go start their welding, but there's not a college program for welding after they initiate that through the high school. So there's a lot of work in this area to be done, not necessarily by manufacturers, but with the
Mhm.
support and help. You know, it's very hard for me as an outsider of manufacturing to forecast demand. But I just know from my 20+ year history in vocational education, there was always a shortage of manufacturing workers, trade workers. There just always was, except I think in 2008 through 10, maybe, when we had a downturn in the economy. But aside from that, people were hiring, people were in need. But I do know we're going to battle for the same high school student. So if we're not on the radar, we're going to be overlooked, and those kids are going to go off and already start their new pathway, whatever that might be. So how do we attract them and get in front of them, if you will? I think we probably need a follow-up conversation with you, Christina, to do, you know,
Yeah.
okay, these are great ideas. What's phase one? And then talk to our champions about, you know, do you want to be a part of this advisory? Maybe it just goes out to our membership, says, here's when the advisory is for the manufacturers that could attend. I'm not sure yet how we go about that, but we want both our manufacturers to find value in these connections with educators, and it's going to look different for each company. Some companies can't do a student tour, but they could do a faculty tour, 3 or 4 people at a time. One last thing that Mary Ann Johnson shared with me is that Superintendent of Schools does have stipends that they will pay for externships. And that means the faculty goes in, job shadows 4 days. They are on site with the manufacturer, kind of follow them around, learn about production, what they're making, how they make it, how that operates. And then they have to create a lesson so that they leave with a tangible product that goes back into the classroom, that it can be utilized immediately, and they can pay for that faculty to get a substitute and to go out and do that job shadowing experience. So we're working on trying to get a database together whereby a couple of things that night that we were working on, we didn't want every manufacturer that raises their hand and says, I want to participate. Hey, I'm on this advisory, I'll do this or that. They're the ones that repeatedly get called on to go to everything, to sit on every committee meeting, and so on and so forth. So we're trying to create a database that will share the wealth, if you will. If Rim of the World says, I want a tour, then we find a company closest to them that has already said, we'll open our door for student tours or faculty tours, and we can kind of help with that intermediary navigation so that every single school district, school site admin, or faculty or counselor doesn't have to try and find a manufacturer, and manufacturers don't have to field 3 or 4 calls from different schools that want to go visit them. Once they go once, then that school tells, well, we toured CSI, and then everybody says, oh, well, who did you talk to at CSI? And so we're just trying to, how can we help? How can we be of value to our membership and also to educators to formulate a system whereby we can systemize the process. We certainly want you to handle it on your own if what you're doing is working. But again, we want to get more manufacturers involved in this next phase.
And I just wanted to add one last thing. There's at least 45 manufacturing and product development pathways in the Inland Empire Desert region at the K-12 level. So that's at least 45 pathways. And then each pathway has usually 1 or 2 classes, minimum 2, to be completed, to be considered a complete pathway. That's over 80 classes, right? At minimum of students. And then if you have like 25 to 30 students, right? That's how much of an audience we have, and a system that's formalized in that kind of can hold the floodgates of people trying to reach out to you, because the last thing that we want is for industry leaders to be maxed out and to be overwhelmed, because then we see them kind of, saying, it's too much, I can't, right? So whatever system we can create to facilitate that and encourage participation. I know the K-12s would be really excited
Okay.
and thankful.
Yes. Well, I see that Molly has her hand up. I have a question for you too, but I'll let Molly, you go.
Oh, I was gonna say it's time to end the show.
Yes, so just real quick, if I could get data from you, Christina, on of those 45, did you say 45 pathways? If we could see, are they full classes? Because I know in the high desert, they said we might only have 8 or 9 to a class versus 30, 20 or 30. It would be interesting to know, are they well attended? Are they last, we just want to do some follow-up with you to find out who's enrolling and how many, and then those are perfect places for our manufacturers to drop in and speak to the students firsthand. So we'll hang tight if you don't mind. And then I want to open the floor though for our manufacturers. Are there any other questions or comments or concerns?
No, I'm gonna have to leave for another another meeting myself, but thank you, everybody.
Sure. Thank you, Judy. Wally, your hand
Wally.
went up.
Just quickly, I think what would be nice to know is what are there successful CTE advisory boards going in some district or another? And maybe Christina, you're with the IEDRC. Is that
Yes.
who's?
Yes.
Okay, are there some successful ones? And then what do the manufacturers do if they participate in that? And if we don't have manufacturers participating, what do some of, say, similar to, let's say, construction people, what are the actions or activities that they do to participate in some of those advisory boards? Does that make sense? And I'm just trying to figure so that we can kind of know how to describe it to the manufacturers, what's sort of expected of them if they participate, that yields some sort of results, some sort of, oh, this seems to be working well. If we can, and it's not something we need an answer right this minute unless you know that.
I think Alan too. Alan has been doing the work. He's been here longer than I have, and I know that he has a heavy hand in this. So I'll also let Alan kind of,
Yeah.
our team.
And while just, Christine and I work very closely hand in hand. She's the K-12 end and I'm the community college ed end, but we basically do the same job. And it's to connect our industry back to our faculty. The meeting that you were at San Bernardino last month, where you came to my meet, that's typically very much like an advisory meeting where we had a lot of faculty members sat around and asked you questions, basically, right? And discussed where their curriculum should head. Most of our advisories are going to work a lot like that.
I see. Okay. So they ask questions about I'm trying to remember what they asked there.
So basically, they have to align their curriculum with industry needs. So what they're going to ask our manufacturers is, what do you need, right? And it's not just, we need people to show up for work. We need people who, don't use their phones on the job, that type of stuff. It's actually what you need for skills. I know Steve was part of the group that developed the mechatronics thing for Mountain Desert Career Pathways. That's the type of really in-depth stuff that we do to develop that curriculum. But then every year we have to revise it, or at least go back out to industry and say, is it still relevant? Is what we designed correct?
I see. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks, Wally and Christina, and thank you, everybody. This was intended to be a small meeting, so it could be a little bit more intimate and we could get into these questions. I'd like to remind you to keep your ears open for potential funding for the Manufacturers Council. With all these exciting programs, we want to do more. We may be limited by our funding. So let us know if you hear of any opportunities. And then another reminder, tell the children that that the elves at the North Pole are not making toys, they're manufacturing toys. So have a wonderful holiday, everybody, and thanks for coming.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Awesome.
everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great afternoon.
Sorry, Cinnamon.